agenda because that is the rule of our business. So we're going to call our meeting to order at 5:42 for Carol's purposes.
Top right is our participants.
Okay, so I don't see anybody on there, so that means we probably don't have anyone for public comment. This is a professional development retreat, more or less, but we have found ourselves in newly deepened water, and for that we've kind of switched gears on what we're going to do and what we're going to spend this time doing. And we're basically just going to wade into that and talk about how we're feeling, and about eventually after we do a few other things. But really to just talk about it and get where people are at and where their questions are at and where they're feeling as a board member. So that ultimately is where we arrived with how to use this retreat to our best advantage. So the big piece will be our leading through uncertainty. That's what it's called, and we're going to do that in a little bit. But the first thing we're going to do, and we can almost do it, well, you two will need to switch, but what we're going to do is a little introductory thing where you chat with someone at this table for like 10 minutes. You can move, you can sit wherever, and you get to know each other a little bit. You don't have to talk about school board. You can. You can talk about why you got on the school board or why you feel like it's important or whatever like that. Or you could talk about your athletes or your family. Or you could talk about your garden or your pie baking or whatever it is that you feel like you want to share with somebody new. Now we do have new board members, 1, 2, 3. Rob will be here shortly. So I would love it if each new board member did not go with each other just because we all know each other. No, I'm just kidding. But we do a little bit. So first round is, and you can get a snack while we do this if you want to. We're going to pick a partner and get to know each other, okay? So pick a partner.
So just to add on to that,
Oh, I can
she says to have
Pick your partner here, is that what you're saying?
the point of this retreat is for us to really begin to develop as a social unit, really. And so that's why getting to know each other is really important, and
We want to know about you.
I'm looking forward to.
So when you
getting to know
come back from meeting each other, then you're going to introduce each other to this table. Okay, so that's the idea. You come back from it with something new you've learned. So I'm going to pick your partners. How about that? We'll make this nice and easy. JB, you're going to be partnered with Pam. Steve, you're going to be partnered with Emily. Rebecca, you're going to be partnered with Corey. Dan, you're going to be partnered with Lisa. Ben. Ben. And Emma, you're going to be partnered with my partner, Cindy. Okay? And who does that leave? Always leaves you. You got a partner? Bobby. Oh, Bobby doesn't have a partner. Bobby can join into whatever gang Rebecca's.
Okay.
What about Mike?
Okay.
Oh, it's Mike.
I'm taking minutes. I'm good.
And then Rob will be here, so when Rob gets here, we'll fold him into again. So go.
Okay, I can go with Rob.
Okay, perfect. So go with your partner.
You have some pressure, then you come here.
I'll come there now.
Sit or chat.
Come here for the chair.
And you're gonna talk to Emma and tell her all about your amazingness.
Yeah, right.
I want to hear about her amazingness.
Okay, Emily. Are you with me or with him?
He's over there. You're with this Emma. This Emma. This Emma. Emma. Have a seat.
Emma.
I was going to say, once you said that, you almost guarantee your company was better with
Introduce yourself. Talk about your kids, grandkids, and kind of stuff.
Did you get some of the seed?
Yeah, it's over there. Oh, great.
All right.
8:30. Yeah. I live in both Waterbury and Essex with my biological dad, and then Waterbury is one of these.
I was racing her.
And you
Yeah.
go into your junior year.
And you decided you responded to the request for people who might be interested, is that the deal?
So I applied for it and I have to fill out an application and walk about why I thought it was a good fit or why I wanted to do it, and then go into sports.
All right, you got to learn about each other. This is good.
Except Rob.
You didn't get to learn about Rob, no. I'll have to do it again.
You're gonna have to tell the whole group.
Yeah, you're gonna have to tell the whole group all about yourself.
You'll have to introduce yourself.
All right, so Corey, what did you learn about Rebecca?
So Rebecca grew up in Wisconsin. She graduated high school. She went into the Coast Guard 3 days after graduation. Age 18.
Jeez,
And then
Louise.
after the Coast Guard, she went into the Peace Corps. It was stationed in Guatemala. That's some coyotes.
Yeah.
And then moved to Rhode Island. Did some other things like law enforcement.
This is pretty good.
Well, no, so that's pretty good. And then moved to North Basin 10 years ago.
Yes.
All right. And what did you learn about Corey?
Corey used to work at Green Mountain Coffee. Also, Corey's from Rutland, so he's an actual Vermonter, 6th generation.
Really?
5 or 6.
And I said, you get to be uppity about everything. He said, not really, I'm a really town. Spent most of his time at Mount Snow. Went out west somewhere for a minute, but then came back because it was nice and green. Was in Burlington, UVM, met his beautiful wife, bought in Waterbury, wanted to stay in Waterbury forever. Has kids.
There you go.
And what did you learn about Bobby?
Bobby also was in the Peace Corps and has an amazing story about being a hostage.
Oh, yeah. Ooh,
Not her.
Some people don't.
That when I heard the hostage thing, everything else kind of blanked out.
What about you, Rebecca? What did you learn about Bobby?
I too was kind of smitten with the hostage situation. But I also learned that you were not from she's from upstate New York.
Well, actually, Westchester.
I know, but people in
We
Westchester
joked
think they're
about it.
upstate, right? And you met Mac here in Vermont.
We didn't actually talk about it, did we?
I think it was assumed, and then there was the Peace Corps, and she was an anthropologist. That was
And
her
I've known
undergrad.
her since I was a small child. And you were friends with my mom, right? And I babysat Bobby's kids when I was a teenager. And it's a small world.
And they were okay.
And
And they're still okay. They're still okay. They're very talented and they do lots of cool things. All right, Emily, what did you find out about Steve Rosenberg?
Yeah, so I learned that we are complete opposites. Steve is very new to Vermont by Vermont standards, so just moving out here officially in 2022, but dabbled in 2020 during the pandemic. Originally wanted to retire in Brooklyn, but the pandemic changed all of that. Learned that he's a math teacher, so I had to admit that I am not good at math at all. He has 2 kids, 2 grandchildren. His wife was in the nonprofit sector. I forget what her last job was, but it ended at 5 o'clock and was very important to her. Ending at 5 o'clock, which I replied, I don't know what that's like. And yeah, that's
Great.
All right, Steve, what did you find out about Emily?
I think confirmed that we're complete opposites. Born and raised and lives in Duxbury.
I think Cindy was her principal at the.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right,
Wow.
she mentioned that.
Really?
Yeah.
2 daughters. She's very big into horses, which also makes us opposites.
You don't like horses?
I like them, but
I like about
she's essentially the driving force behind a computer company that deals with all things Apple, and she's kind of the go-to person on every job involved in that business. One daughter is a Ninja Warrior, which explains the big bruise on her arm.
Showcasing.
It has a perfectly innocuous explanation.
Well, she's got the bruise, not the kids, so it's. But I won the race. There's a reason. Excellent. Pam, what did you find out about JB Weir?
So we talked a lot about soccer, but I think the first thing I noticed, he's wearing a lot of Taylor Swift paraphernalia.
Oh, yeah.
He does have to.
He actually had to earn the 1989 bracelet by wearing the red and the Reputation bracelet for weeks, months, years, I don't know. But they missed out. They missed out on seeing her in concert, and he did not tell me how many times they watched the movie of it. So I'm going to take his silence as many, many times. He's a recovering attorney, so he kind of could understand where I'm coming from, I think, as a practicing attorney. But we also talked a lot about soccer and hockey and a lot of sports because he also loves soccer, love of Ted Lasso, such a good show. I think he has more optimism for the next season than I do, but...
I hated that show.
Such a good show. I hope he's right that the next season's going to be awesome.
Okay, JB, how about our new attorney, Pam?
Sure. Well, I think Pam and I actually had a lot in common. So she is a medical malpractice defense attorney, and I used to be on the other side. That's kind of why I stopped. She's
Not because of me.
Oh, you're on the right side. I'm done. She's got an eight-year-old son named Harley. She's originally from halfway between St. Louis and Kansas City. Grew up rooting for a hodgepodge of local teams down there. And her husband works does medical operating equipment. Correct? Close enough?
Close enough.
Yes. There's more.
All right.
It was lovely to meet you.
Excellent. Did either of you want to share anything you learned about Rob in your 5 minutes that you had?
5 seconds.
He was a Army brat? Military brat? Military, sorry. I don't want to misclassify you.
All branches.
So he moved around a lot, including 3 years in England, but he did not have a favorite soccer team that he was willing to admit to.
And it's interesting, my sister, who's 9 years older than me, she was in high school in England, and her friend in class ended up being my math teacher in high school.
Really? Here in the States? No.
Yeah.
Wow. That is small world.
That is, wow.
And his wife just opened a PT practice in
Yes.
Waterbury.
And he's got sons 5, 5, and 8.
Twin 5-year-olds.
And my son just turned 8 on the 18th.
They were the competition this week.
No.
My son and I. There was a
The twins can't make the basket.
There was a girl in front of us who scored 10 out of 10 baskets on the shots. And I was like, oh, we're going down. I think we made one.
What's her name on the jacket?
Alice. I don't remember Alice's last name. She was phenomenal.
And I learned that those two are fans of Ted.
Oh, stop it. I cried at Ted Lasso video like once a day. I love that. It inspires me. All right, Ben Clark, what did you find out about our CFO, Lisa Essler?
Right. I don't remember everything.
Did I make that sound
Some
like-
things are a little jumbled, and I might get things a little confused. So Lisa's also a recovering ninja who likes horses, right? No, I got those things mixed up. So, gotcha. Right. No, she. I got a lot of information. She's actually, she's had a home here for quite some time. She was lucky enough, she said, to move here after retirement to sort of do this in her retirement. Of course, from our point of view, we are lucky to have had her. And after listening to just some of the work that she's done over the years, I just was convinced that this woman needs a raise.
Don't say that.
Lose Lisa. So I was just very privileged to be a part of that conversation, and it was just very. For somebody who likes numbers and likes math so much, it was very entertaining. Entertaining is the wrong word. It was very
Not mathy?
well. It was to listen to Lisa just talk about life. The fact that she's so relaxed, that she's so like let it go. That even talk about New Jersey of all places. Like, or I would just be like, oh my God, just to think about New Jersey and the highways just makes me clamp right up. She's just so relaxed about everything that I just feel like we're in very good hands. So, thank you.
I couldn't agree more.
And she's great at home remodeling, it's kind of her.
Simultaneously,
Oh, yeah.
and adopting animals, and
Adopting
like
animals.
gardening,
I
and
don't
like
know
some
how you guys
crazy
would do
amount of
that.
things. I will say that I think that the CFO is one of the, we really hit the jackpot.
Oh, yeah.
We certainly
when we
did.
got this one. So, okay, Lisa, no crying. What would you like to say about Ben?
Well, Ben, first of all, is thrilled that I pushed his wife to take vacation because she hadn't taken vacation.
Yay!
And they need time
Yes.
over the summer, and it's going to be wonderful that they're going to be able to spend time together. I thought he was in photography, but he says his wife does the photography, and he just carries the backpack. So, I was asking why he became a board member, and it was interesting how he said he became a board member, and he's interested, and even though he feels sometimes that he's a bull in a china shop, but it was interesting that he said it was very rewarding, and how he, people reached out to him to be able to join the board, and what the difference that he's going to make here. So,
Well, I think you are a bull in a china shop. Buddy.
Thank you. Yeah. No.
I think that is one of your strong suits, if I'm honest. I never have to worry that you're not going to contact me or tell me how you really feel.
Yeah.
So,
I always
obviously, that
appreciate
is
the
a
moments
good
of
thing.
brevity or laughter. You can bring
Brevity.
I agree.
Yes.
Brevity, uh-huh.
Yeah.
I actually do think you provide a little bit of release and comic relief at the table sometimes, and I know that I appreciate that. Sometimes it's really necessary. Last but not least, Emma and Sydney sat together and met each other. What did you find out about Emma?
I found out that Emma actually really wanted to be on the board. She saw Cashel's advertisement out there for people to apply who might be interested, and she did. And her father is sitting right next to her stepfather, is Ben, and so I think that's awesome that the two of them are together on
I
the
do
board.
too.
I think it's a great thing, okay? She was interested in being able to participate in making a difference in our district, and she was thinking particularly about some of the issues that students have to be involved with. For instance, the phone cell issue, and also AI issues. Those were the two specific ones, but really looking not so much at content area issues, but what were some of the issues of social and living issues in the high school. So I thought that was sort of cool. And she was hoping that she could help bring some difference to the district in those issues. In addition to school work that she does, she's the captain of the golf team, which plays in the fall. And she also plays softball in the spring, so she has a couple of sports things that she does and likes to do. And in the summer, she's working this summer, she's a camp counselor at the gymnastics program. That's cool. So that's sort of going, am I missing anything? I don't know what I'm missing here.
I will say that Cashel did tell us that you were highly qualified for this position. Just so you know, don't normally get that much background from Cashel, and he did say that about him. He said, this is the one, so you should feel good about it.
When Emma arrived at the library at our last meeting, or the first meeting that she came to, and we had our new desk settings, right, and everything, and she was like, well, where should I sit? And I said, you get to choose. Cashel's not here yet, so
was like,
you
I'm
get
not
to
doing
choose.
that.
Where do you want to sit? And we'll tell Cashel that that's where you guys are going to sit. So I hope she didn't think I was
Noticing chain of command.
that I wasn't.
What did you learn about Cindy?
she's vice chair. She's on the leadership team, and she's lived in Duxbury for like a really long time. She is a long-distance bike rider and proud owner of a e-bike. And she does that a lot, and she says she would suggest it to anyone who likes biking but is a little bit older or a little bit less able to like physically bike long distances. She has 2 sons who live in Duxbury with 5 grandchildren in the district. She loves bird watching, and she likes to listen to audiobooks and watch reality TV like Survivor.
Good for you.
You got Will on Survivor too?
Love it. She was the principal of Duxbury for a long time, and then she has her doctorate in administration education.
All right, nobody knows this, but it's Ernie. Ernie is my yellow lab. It's his 5th birthday today.
Ernie is very energetic.
Ernie is very energetic, and he's a really sweet dog, and he's 5
Yeah,
years.
Poppy's babysat him a little bit.
Yes,
and
Poppy's
loves him.
babysitting. We'll babysit him this summer too, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that was pretty good. Let's go if we could quiz Rob down and make him tell us some more stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll move on. Okay. So that was great. This is what we dreamed about, a little time just to talk and relax and not be too stressed about timeline and what we're doing. So, but with that in mind, the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to do a little overview of 454. Some of us, Cindy, myself.
So what are we doing, when's dinner?
Dinner's at 7 on the nose.
So do we want to take a couple minutes and do some more appetizers, or is there?
Yeah, we could do that. Are there more? Is there much? There's more.
Are there more appetizers?
I don't know.
I just see those samosas.
I know. I think that might be it. I don't know.
They were good though.
They were.
If you didn't get any samosas, you go get some samosas.
I should bring the plate.
Sure.
Yeah, do that. And while we're doing that, let's just hear a little more about you.
Wait, did anyone interview you?
No.
Ashley and I are
Oh my
looking at
God, you
minutes
know
and
what?
sitting talking.
Can we collectively like create
Yes.
something about Ashley?
Create one. That's what
Yeah,
we need.
not that I don't want to hear more about Rob, but I feel like we're still missing 2 people at this table.
Okay, what do you want to know?
What do you gotta tell us?
Go ahead.
From a phenomenal maker of donuts.
Oh,
What is your favorite donut? Not necessarily that you make, but just ever. If you had to choose any donut, what would it be?
I have to say an incredible thing happened to me lately in the donut world. When I was very young, 23, my husband and I opened a donut shop where Pizza Soul is next to me here on Woodsfield. It's a little, right now it's a hole-in-the-wall pizza store. But we ran it for 6 years, and it was called the Very Small Donut Company. And then we sold it to 2 ladies from Sugarbush who were managers who ran it for 5 years. And it destroyed their friendship, unfortunately. But it was a small brand. It was a little bit of a nightmarish business in a lot of ways. But we then moved on to other things. But when it sold, when it went under 4 owners later, I went back to the sale of it, to the auction, because I wanted to get my sign and some things. And I ended up meeting the people who own the Big Picture. And they coaxed me to come work for them, and my mom had just passed away, and I was a little bit in at odd ends, and I didn't know what I was doing, so I did reopen the donut shop at the Big Picture. And they had those donuts there for a decade, more even, probably by this point.
That was you.
Yeah.
I started them back up at the Big Picture, but I initially had that business in the early 90s. But then they, Big Pic went under for a blink, right? And then it just got reborn as Bigger Picture. But the woman who was making my donuts at the Big Pic was like, hey, I'm not gonna let these donuts die. And she got herself a commercial kitchen in her home in Granville, took my recipe book from the cabinet at the Big Picture, I guess, and she'd been making it. And just the other day, I went into BB's Bagels, which is Bunny's daughter's bagels. And she's standing there, and I had like a little bit of a I was like, oh my God, I made a total scene. And then I bought the donuts, and I was like talking to everybody and making it. I just made a fool of myself. But those donuts were as close to the real thing that I made 1.6 million of before I sold my donut shop. And I was like, I brought them home to my husband. We stood there practically had some tears over the fact that they were still around.
That's great.
Conception, 1993 we opened.
Wow.
And here we are in 2025, and those donuts, I mean, and they were
Were they still good? Did
They
they do a
were
good job
good.
with them?
Well, the big picture had many people make them, so they vacillated, and I stopped getting them.
Yeah.
But this lady.
Is her
and she-
name Virginia?
Yes.
She's my next door neighbor.
Yes.
She gave me those donuts.
Oh my gosh, I was so, ironically hugged her. I was like, this is amazing. She
She's
goes,
my next door
it's like I'm reading a legend. That's what she said to me, and I was like, no, this is like, I mean, I was so I'm a donut maker and a baker and a cook, and I run them in at the Round Bar.
Well, now you have to
Was there
share
like
that
a
recipe.
recipe that like got handed over?
You know, it was a recipe that I took a recipe out of Family Farmer, and I changed it and doctored it, and like you do with recipes, you kind of make it your own and grow it and make it bigger and whatever. So it was kind of my recipe. But when I sold my business initially, I hand wrote, that's, you can tell what year, it kind of time of, it was 99 or, it was
Like
99.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, like exactly. It was a handwritten notebook, and I had it, and I got it back when I went to the big picture, and it was just coated. It was like every page was like stiff. Yeah. It was pretty cool, and that
And
and
that's what she took with her?
she must have. Either she memorized it, put pictures of it. I don't know how she did it, but I have not tasted the donut that's like my donut ever. In all the time since I stopped making
They,
them. So.
they were never the same until you bought it back. And that,
Yeah.
that was better.
But then it kind of
Yeah.
waned again, you know,
Yeah.
so, but that, I'm a serial manager. I've managed a bunch of businesses in the valley. I always do food. I love to employ young people. I like to torture the young. I think they deserve it a little bit, and
That's
it's
your
how
wording.
that's how you make a great employee, you know, you torture them. So they're like, you wouldn't believe what I had to do back in the day. So, yeah, that's kind of me, and I grew up in the valley. I went to the Warren Elementary School. I went to Harwood. I did go to private school. I went to Kimball Union from my sophomore year on, but that was because my mom had MS, and she wanted me to get out there and have my free life of being in high school. So I went away to boarding school, but then I met my English husband in Nantucket, and then we ended up coming back here because we wanted to have a family.
Yeah.
And why would we not do that when we know that?
I want you to add about the community fund.
Oh, okay, well, briefly, Rebecca and I have a long-standing relationship because she was my employee,
No, that's not the part.
an amazing employee of the Mad River Community Fund, which is a nonprofit that helps people in the valley who are suffering from all number of different financial traumas and troubles. And it was actually hatched for my mom, who had MS in the 80s and 90s, and she approached her good friend Arthur Williams, who's a long-standing community member, and said, I think I'm gonna lose my house. And he was like, we're gonna have a fundraiser. So they had a big event for her that was, they had hoped to raise $10,000 to help her stay in her house, and they raised $60,000 in one night at Sugarbush. And they decided they could hatch the Mad River Community Fund to help all citizens. I mean, they gave my mom that money. Boom, kept her in her house for 10 years. And then the Mad River Community Fund was born, and I came on that board about 15 years ago. And now I've been the chair for, I don't even know how long now. Rebecca and I made that happen, actually, in a weird way. But yeah, that's my other project in life is I get to give away money to people and help people. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
It's a little not as, it's like the antidote to the school board, you know, where you constantly feel like you're in this, how can we take when we don't want to take? And then I could do this other board where all I have to do is give, which is a nice balance. So, that's good enough. Let's hear about Dr. Mike now.
So what's your question?
Do you have a donor recipe that you've been
I am not the baker or the cook in the family.
Am I really invited on your next trip to Paris?
Yes.
That sounds like
Was that
a good
recorded
field
on the
trip.
Zoom meeting?
Sorry.
The lawyer is taking notes right now.
He didn't say he was paying for it.
We had plenty of room. He asked me the day we were leaving, and I said, you can come along.
Where's your next trip to?
So my wife and I love to travel. So when we were first married, which will be 33 years, July 11th, Our wedding anniversary is coming up. Our first trip, we were both teachers, and we had July off, and we had a lot of time, and we didn't have much money. So we had saved to stay a week in Hilton Head, and then we tent camped for the next week through the South and came back home. And we've talked ever since we've been married about going to Nova Scotia, and never have been able to do that. So we are going to take a trip. We're leaving July 10th, and we'll be going to the 20th. And Poppy's staying with our house with our 2 dogs as well.
Are you driving up there?
We're going to drive.
Nice.
Yeah, we're going to drive. So that's our next trip to Nova Scotia, and we decided, we talked about tent camping this time, because we still have our equipment and still occasionally do that, but we decided we were going to stay at motor lodges. So the old style motels where you pull up, and there's some very cool places, and it's it was so much fun. It was kind of a little nostalgic because we had a list of places, and I would say most of the places we were looking at, you don't go online and make reservations like you do in chain hotels. The one place said, email us, don't call us, and we'll call you back and ask for your credit card. So that was once. And the other one was only phone calls, and we called, no one answered, and then about 10 minutes my phone rang and someone said, did you just try to call us at the hotel? So we made a reservation there, so it's very cool. So that's our trip. And we like to travel, so that we always are coming up with something new. But for the most part, we moved to Vermont because we like to come here in the summer, and we don't really want to go any place in the summer. So we've kind of transitioned over traveling either February or April, mainly April. So we just like being here.
That sounds great. And I learned that Dr. Mike was born the year I graduated high school. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, we're the same age, right?
1969.
69. Yeah. My Venmo handle is Ashley Elwood 69. I wanted to change it. There's no changing that. I don't like it. I don't like my birthday. I don't think everybody can see on my birthday.
And see, Bobby said that, but I consider myself older, but that's why you like to have company with people who remind you of those things. Because when I joined the Rotary Club, first in Lancaster and now here, I always get reminded that I'm one of the young members. And I said that if I can be young, I'm considered a young member at the age of 56, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that is kind of nice. I actually think one of the benefits of one of the nice features of this board is we've got all ages here, and that kind of gives us more. We have a lot more historical knowledge, thanks to Cindy, thanks to Bobby. And then we have a lot of young people now, which I also appreciate.
But I'll also tell you a story about Lisa, because you mentioned about Lisa. So Lisa and I both retired from another career and moved here. But when I was hired in February, and I can't remember when you were interviewed. Was it May? April. So the story there was the board wanted to make sure that the outgoing superintendent, was giving me the ability to hire people. And she was very gracious in that process. And I got a call, I think it was a Thursday, saying Michelle Baker, who was the finance director at the time, just got an application from this woman. We have to hire her or someone else. You have to interview her or somebody else will get her. So I said, she sent me the resume. I said, looks great, let's get it set up. So they called. Am I right, it was a Friday that we interviewed you?
Well, no, you had, I sent my resume in on a Friday.
Okay, it was Friday.
At 4 o'clock. I got a
Yes.
phone call for an interview at 8 o'clock Monday morning.
That's what it was Friday I got this call and I said, go ahead, set up the interview.
Monday morning, and then I had an offer by Monday afternoon. I hadn't even really thought about retiring.
You didn't retire.
That's how it ended.
It was Bridget and Michelle in here, and I was on Zoom from Lancaster, and Lisa was on Zoom from Rutgers, from New Jersey, and she got off, and I said, hire her. And they did.
I had to go down and shock my dean and tell him I was retiring. She's like, wow!
You're like, I guess I just got a job in Vermont. Oh my gosh. I believe it. I know,
How
these are
fortunate for us.
retired jobs for these two. They both, you know, it's kind of interesting to think of this being slowing down. I don't see
Yeah.
how it's slowing down.
At this side of the table, we're thinking about retirement differently.
I'm not saying, I don't think either of us are slowing down, I think it's just
No,
a
no.
different,
No,
different effect.
Yeah, different.
It's rewirement.
Yes.
Exactly, not retirement.
Yeah.
Just a new pace.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
So higher ed, secondary and elementary. It's wonderful.
Oh.
Yeah, for you.
Is it? Is it wonderful?
It's different. It is.
It is
I'm
different.
still learning things every
I
day.
bet. And now we're all in flux, we're all gonna be.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how many of us have kids in the district now?
In the schools.
Kids or grandkids? Cindy counts for
I have
grandkids.
5 grandkids, so.
Steve has grandkids.
And you
That's
have
pretty
grandkids.
good. I don't have anything.
How about raising freshmen? There's a bunch of us. with
How
raising
many of you have
freshmen.
freshmen?
I'm gonna start a support group for moms of grumpy teenage girls, so.
Oh, I'm ready for that.
All the eye rolling, that could be your secret handshake, you just be like,
Well, at the 8th grade graduation, I saw you, I saw JB, and of course, Mike, there's 4 of us right there, and Jonathan Cloud, who of course is no longer on the board.
right. She thought Jonathan Young, was
Yes, I remember
Jonathan
that.
Cloud, was Jonathan Young.
20 minutes. Felt like,
So Jonathan Cloud was on the board when I was hired, but then Ashley replaced Jonathan Cloud.
Yes.
no, I didn't figure it out until JB came along, you said something or other, and I was like, oh.
That's not him.
You're all good.
Yeah, I always have the 2 Jonathans mixed up.
There were 2 Jonathans at that time, they were both on the board, and they were both on board.
Yes, yeah.
Double Jonathan
Exactly.
show.
I had no idea who I was going to half the time.
Well, Jonathan says he's coming tonight, I hope he does. He is a great sort of backbone board member in that he has been on the board now 7 years, I think. And that's all, I think he's our longest standing board. And he 100% does it for the right reasons, and he gets away with that Zoom thing because he works over the hill and like over Lincoln Gap. And he lives just on this side of Lincoln Gap, and he doesn't get home till late, so I was giving a little bit of a buy on that. But he is historically excellent, I think, thoughtful, kid-loving board member. And now I'm currently employing his stepson at my job, which is great. He's awesome. Yes. All right, so 454?
I think Ashley has been putting this off.
I know, it's like guillotine of 454.
So I'll also say, I'll give an overview, and I shared some information that came from the School Board Association, but I also wanted to mention that last night, Cindy, Ashley, and I went to
And
a
Steve.
forum, and Steve, went to a forum at the Bigger Pick that was held by our state representatives and 3 senators from Washington County. And they had, the goal was to go over all the legislation and seek public input and comment and talk about it and answer questions. And it became very clear from the audience that the audience wanted to talk about the education transformation bill. I would say 90%
90
of the
plus.
people were either
Teachers.
or board members or the superintendent or spouses.
Yep.
I think there were 2 people there who wanted to talk about something else.
They
but
looked a little disappointed.
Yes.
We're like, yeah, we're not moving on, and they were like,
It was advertised, it was in Front Porch Forum, it was not advertised too widely.
it really wasn't.
I didn't see it until my neighbor who owns Moose Meadow Lodge, if anybody knows Willie Docto, he called me and said, hey Mike, he was the moderator. He said, I'm moderating it and I think you should go, so that's how I got there, and it was only Ashley and Cindy. And it was well attended, so it was all of our state reps, Derek Corey. She was not there. So it was Derek Corey and Candace White from the Valley in Duxbury, and then Tom Stevens. Teresa could not make it. She had another engagement from Waterbury and areas north. And then all 3 senators were there: Ann Cummings, Andrew Perchlik, and Ann Watson. So I think one of the things that was mentioned, and it was a very civil discussion. People had very strong feelings, but very good civil discussion. But I think one of my takeaways is there's not many places in this country where you can go and have all your representatives there having an open conversation, talking about their positions, and having really good engagement. I really appreciated that. And Ashley was sitting beside me, and I said, you know, I've corresponded with every single one of them, sometime over the multiple times, and every single one of them, every one from, you know, Dara and Candace are my reps as well, but all of them responded. Our 3 state senators responded, and most people I talked to had that same experience. So I think when we're talking about tough things,
at least they show up. And they did, of all of them, you know, Dara, Andrew Perchlick, Ann Watson, Tom Stevens all voted against it. And Candace
voted
for it.
and Ann Cummings voted
And Ann
for it.
Cummings voted for it. Ann Cummings was the main talker, slow talker. But they were really polite and they were really informative. And, you know, it doesn't feel great. They don't look happy. They don't look like they feel like good about it. None of them. I mean, they were low shoulders. I
don't feel
felt
like
like
they really feel like they really get it all the way.
they definitely don't all the way get it, and it feels a little like they're coalescing because they've been promised change anyway to come in the interim as this thing gets set up. But I have I find that a really rushed approach it's like what happened with 46, right? They're like, everyone who signs on early is going to get the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 tax break, or if we don't all do it, we're not going to get that. You know, there were these pressures put on to make us sign up early for Act 46, and the fact that they all went in early on this thing, it felt like that again, like we're going to race it through and then I guess figure out the fallout afterwards. But we as a group would be.
And several times, I was there just for the second half of it, but I thought several times and I've heard from them in some of their letters back and stuff, that they talk about that there's these off-ramps and that they voted for this because we get these off-ramps on this, that in the next couple of years, we're gonna be able to change this. And I'm thinking, great, she didn't change it now. What makes you think you're gonna change it 6 months from now? I just couldn't get over that.
Right, and they're, you know, wanting to, I mean, the point was for us to ask questions. They talked for 65 minutes before
Did they
anyone.
present? What?
No, they
this
just.
is what it means.
No, they kind of
That's such a
defended
foreign
themselves. It was really,
defended their vote.
they defended why they voted the way they did, and they kind of believed in that this is like, if not now, when, was a quote from Teresa who wasn't there. If not now, when will we, and like everything about that feels forced, rushed, and
did they seem like they were shopping for problems because they had a solution? Or did it feel like they genuinely had a grasp of what the problem was, they just didn't know which solution might fit?
I think I would say that they understand that the problem is growing costs. And they talked about, they recognized what are our growing costs. Our biggest 2 costs, for all of you who voted for the budget know, healthcare and special education costs. And they acknowledged both of those. But they also acknowledged that they are not easy to solve.
Right.
So I think they very much feel that the voters last year demanded change and they have to do something different. So the very first piece, and they talked about kind of this, you know, they mentioned, Ashley and Cindy and Steve mentioned that they talked about kind of this framework, and everything's built on the first piece, and if the first piece doesn't happen, then the other pieces kind of fall off the record. So the first piece is schools governance, and I think those of us who've been very involved in this, our big concern is there's not a lot of savings in school consolidation. In fact, the way they're doing it, many of us have concerns that it's going to cost more money, not less. So the first piece is the establishment of a redistricting task force, and there would be 11 members They have to start work almost immediately, and they have to have their report by December 1st. And it's going to be 6 legislators, 3 from the House, 3 from the Senate. They can't be of the same party from each chamber, so there has to be at least 2 Democrats and a Republican. And then there are going to be 5 appointees, 2 appointed by the Speaker of the House, 2 appointed in the Senate by the Committee on Committees, and then 1 from the Governor. And they have to represent different, it's the kind of their professional education expertise. So superintendents, finance directors, 1 member, I can't remember whether it's from the House or Senate, has to be a superintendent. They have to be retired superintendents or retired finance directors, which is wise. And the 1 superintendent has to be a superintendent from a supervisory union. So those 11 members will get professional assistants. They set aside money for consultants, and they have to bring back to the legislature 3 different plans, 3 different maps. One of those maps has to preserve supervisory unions. And then starting in January with the next session of the legislature, they'll start debating those maps, and if they can agree to one that they pass, then the other pieces start to fall into place.
If they agree to one, then if they can vote on a plan, then that will start that ball rolling, and will still continue to function for a while as normal, but they will then be figuring out the money, like the bonds and, right? They're gonna have to come together and in the foundation formula but really like if we're gonna merge with, say, Stowe and all that section, who knows if we would, but now the districts have to be 4,000, 8,000 people, and we have 1,600, and Stowe probably has 1,600, so that's probably not enough, so all this machinations of how a district can come together. I mean, there's all the debt, theirs, ours, and that comes all of them. I mean, that part I thought, I didn't mean to interrupt, but that was like, just felt like, they're gonna become a legal entity before it becomes a district, so that the beginnings can begin. But.
So am I correct in trying to understand this, that the governor's proposal of 5 districts, that's off the table?
That's off the table.
They're going to use this task force to really study what it seems.
In legislation, they have a target of 4,000 to 8,000 students per district. And to the extent practical, because there were some of us who saw the initial conversation, who reached out to some of the reps and said, 4,000 in the state of Vermont is not very realistic. Cindy and I were at the Capitol on the day they passed, having conversations with legislators, and I spoke to one state representative, not one of ours, but someone who said to me, and I was saying, some of my concerns that the numbers they're showing are not research-based, particularly in a state like ours, and her response to me was, Miami-Dade County only has 1 superintendent. And what I said to her is, I know a little bit about Miami-Dade County. They're about 2,000 square miles. They have about 385,000 students.
Yeah.
We have 85,000 students in a little over 6,000 square miles. And by the way, I've been to Miami, and I don't think they have any mountains.
None. And I don't think they have good schools.
And nobody talks about Miami as like
the great school.
the pinnacle.
Let's be like Miami.
It's like, is that what we're looking at?
I know, is that what we
You know those numbers off the top of your head.
Well, some people have asked me, so I made sure I understood. But, one of the things that people ask me about that, I give my own experience. My own experience is we have in Harwood 1,700 students, 240 square miles. We are in the valley between 2 ranges of the Green Mountains. So for comparison, I was previously a superintendent in a district in a county of 550,000 people, about the size of Vermont. We were in a county, my school district had about 5,600 students, 3 times our enrollment, in 110 square miles, so less than half the square mileage. So that impacts our number of schools, and it also impacts other things. So there has been some other research, and I shared, I don't know whether it fell on deaf ears or what, but there was a research study from Maine, and they tried some consolidation.
Yeah, they didn't do that.
And what they said was, what impacted their cost savings were things like transportation.
Yeah.
That we're gonna run up against.
Yeah, so-
And then they undid it in Maine, didn't they? Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
But there are a number of studies that show that it's not as easy as, and that's why our concerns, and you would also be merging, so let's say we do merge with Lamoille South. We would have two different teacher contracts, or White River Valley
That's the
Supervisory
other
Union.
piece, teacher contract.
You have teacher contracts, and what the cost savings, and I asked the secretary this in one of our commission meetings, who touted raising salaries, and I said that if you look at the numbers that they used the average. And I said, we pay above the average, and some districts around us pay below the average, so are you saying that you raise those to the average, and do you really think that
People will
that
stay.
labor unions are gonna say, yes, we'll volunteer to take a pay
Yes.
cut?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
not
no,
how it works.
It's not gonna happen.
No, it levels up. I mean, that will be a price increase.
So there's the geographic piece that they need to figure out and vote on, and then what? Once that happens?
So once that happens, there's also a school district voting ward working group that would decide, you give recommendations, that's led by the Secretary of State and some other people on that panel who would decide what's proportional representation for school boards. What should that look
Right.
like? How do we make sure towns? So that's a piece that it would have to be accomplished. The goal would be, in the legislation, for new districts to form July 1st, 2028, so in 3 years.
And they're trying to run out teacher contracts and staff contracts prior to like the full execution, right? So we can start over. Is that kind of what it was?
Yeah, I think there's some ideas that they've talked about that haven't been fully developed. So that's a piece that has to happen. Another piece that would take effect July 1st, 2026 are class size minimums. And just from listening to the conversations that they've had, the one piece they're not talking about, and I'll talk about one of the ramifications with that is, there has been talk about schools, the size of schools.
Yeah,
And we have
right.
some, and Candace, last night, Candace White talked about the schools that have, what did she use?
4 students in a
Yes.
class.
And she said, well, of course, that won't affect our schools, but, they do bring up those topics, but the legislature isn't going to directly recommend closure of schools.
So they,
Up to who?
Well, the new local boards would be the ones that have to make those decisions.
With minimum class sizes, does that mean, so we have a lot of first, second grade, third, fourth grade? When
Those,
you're talking about, there are 4 kids amongst first and second grade, or just there's 4 first graders?
well,
It
they
doesn't
were
matter
real
if
vague
they're
about
first and second.
it. They were using it as kind of a ugly benchmark, as if there are loads of schools that have these teeny micro classes.
Isn't it, I mean, is
But
it 12?
But the legislation, they would be looking at grades, so grade 1. How many kids do you have in grade 1? How many
Even if you have a
But they're not
multi-age
looking
classroom?
even if-
That doesn't.
well,
make sense.
no,
It's
maybe.
lost.
And there are some exclusions, pre-kindergarten, kindergarten,
Yep.
career and tech education, flexible pathways, terminal courses,
AP
advanced
classes.
placement classes, courses requiring specialized equipment, driver's education, small group services for special education, supplemental or targeted academic interventions, or English learner instruction.
What I don't understand,
Those are
when I was doing Duxbury, when my son was in Duxbury, there were only 3 third graders
Yeah.
in the classroom. And he was actually in a 3, 4, 5. Now they're saying they're gonna
Only
limit it
2
to 2
grade
grades
levels.
per room.
Yeah.
But still, my understanding was that the numbers related to the classroom size, not to grade size. So if you have a 1, 2, if you have a 3, 4 that has, if they had his 3 and
12.
then another, 5.
But it's not clear, because that's important for like, face my son was one.
It's 18 in high school.
It was combined.
The number was
I- I'm
18 in
not-
high school.
I have to look at the actual legislation,
Yeah.
and there's also a lot of concerns too. My biggest concern is what we've seen in Vermont before, and Tom Stevens talked about this, Act 60, Act 68, Act 46. There's this rush with a part-time legislature that only needs 5 months to put everything in legislation right at that time. And my concern has always been, once you put it in, it's hard to get that out of
Right.
legislation. Other places around the country that look at big reform, they look at it in a multi-phased approach where we develop first our framework, And then we go to the details, and then again, I've shared with our state reps that you first have to have a vision. What's our vision? Then you need to look at the different pieces. You have to look at the governance, and everything was done this year with the promise that, oh, we'll fix it if it doesn't work. In the meantime, the other piece that they pointed out too is, and I don't remember which one brought it up, but we all know that the legislature and governor have approved $118 million from reserves. It's like $68 million from the general fund and the rest from the education fund to buy down tax rates this year. After our voters already approved it. And they also mentioned that the Joint Fiscal Office, which is an independent, or nonpartisan office that advises them, has said things are going to be really bad next year.
Yeah.
So, and the governor even admitted that it's not wise policy to use surplus to buy down tax rates. They did it anyway.
But aside from that, right, so the steps are, they're gonna do the districting, whatever, figure that
First,
out.
governance.
And then they're gonna figure out what boards look like. And then they're gonna enforce the minimum class size. And then what's the next piece?
Then the funding formula would start to take, the new foundation formula would start to take effect, I think it's 2029 or
29.
29?
Yeah, 2020.
And so are you saying?
2029,
Okay, so the cost of things are not gonna change until 28, 29.
that's when they're gonna start to
Yeah.
change.
And
In the
then
meantime,
if they go down, that would be shocking.
And in the meantime, we're now gonna make up this deficit because we use surplus money that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so taxes will be much higher until something's gonna happen in
Well,
28, 29.
they'll be held down a little bit this year, but we're not gonna do a buy down next year. There's no more money left. I mean, there can't be more money left.
What is this year?
This year is, it's for our, when we pay our taxes in '26.
Yeah.
That's when, that's the one they bought down.
Right, so
That's
they
built
bought,
up
they
around.
already bought down,
Yeah.
they're
They
buying
were already
down,
down.
and
Right.
everything had already been passed, so.
Right.
So it's, for 2026, is they added that $118 million, which taxes, budgets were already approved.
Yeah.
So now they're throwing it in, and anytime you throw in one-time funding,
Right.
you have a hiccup that next year because you have to make up for that shortfall.
Yeah.
I'm stuck. Did you say hiccup?
Hiccup.
Okay, so that's like a geographical thing. Where's that from? It's a hiccup. So the 50 million that we're gonna be short and we have to lose all this staff, is it 50 million? And we're gonna lose 50, I'm sorry, it's not 50 million.
6 million.
That's just the
Yeah.
foundation.
50 million is based on it, right?
At what point do we lose 50 more staff? This is my Facebook
with the
information, so maybe it's
foundations.
garbage.
Well, when Dr. Mike was talking about this is the other thing that was annoying, and that number that got released was $15,044 was what a consulting firm said the per pupil costs should be, based on all these things, and PICUS and all these different things, 15. And Ann Cummings made a fuss at that meeting about saying that was never a fact, that was just a space holder, and the whole of the state of Vermont freaked out because that number's too low. And when we were talking about it in our world, we were using that number as part of our discussion, which was those 50 teachers. That's a $6 million roughly cut to us. Am I right about that?
and that would be, again, her point was that was projected for a future time.
Right, she was like, it's just a space holder. It's like, well, you shouldn't have released a number that was a number, because we're all gonna look
You
at the
put it
number.
in the
and do some math.
legislation.
So we'd have no idea what potential outfall is gonna be.
No.
And it's predicated on the fact that you have these larger governance
Yeah.
districts that will maybe have some cost savings to them.
Even though we're unpaid. Remember that. We're
What is
all
our cost
unpaid.
per student?
We are about 15.4 on average from the education fund, is that correct? I think-
You mean
Right
what
now.
our current one?
Yes, for next year.
Yes, very close to what they.
It's around 15.4. The new foundation number that they have for 5 years from now is like $15,033
$33,
or
yeah.
33 or something.
For 4 or 5 years from now.
So,
Yeah,
and-
it'll be less definitely, I'm sure.
I don't mean to tug sideways, but I just saw that the representative from Barry had mentioned that their per student spending was about $12,000.
Right.
Which
blew my mind.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I thought ours was, I don't know why I thought 17 was just spaced in diapers. I don't know.
Well, remember that
That's
ours
crazy.
was used to be higher, but then they changed the formula.
Oh,
So they
Remember?
made the number, they tweaked the number by, how did they do it? They made the math problem a little.
So it's the weighted
The weighted
pupils.
cube.
So if you look at our weighted pupils, it's what confuses our voters, because our weighted pupils show more of the kids than we actually have. But it's how they've calculated the formula.
But we don't have that many weights compared to other districts.
We don't have as many as compared to like Winooski or
Correct.
Burlington. We don't have as many EL English language learners. We don't have as many.
It's still a it's a misrepresentation of the actual amount of students that a district reports to have, because you're giving a number that isn't necessarily because of the weight. It's not the actual number.
And what's very discouraging to me in this process is to just see the educators, experts in education, being pushed out of this process more and more. I mean, having this committee of 11 where 6 are legislators and 5 are educators, it's like,
Why is
ball
that?
ball game's over.
And you have our legislators who don't completely understand the problems or have.
I got the
get their vote
impression
for it.
that there was some facts that were talked about last night are not the facts.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of, they're as burned out
Yeah.
as everyone else is. You know, they've heard every number 50 ways and 50 times. So I'm a little forgiving and understanding of them not fully grasping. However, they did call a meeting and sit down in front of a group of people. I don't know, when I do that, I like spend some time preparing because I don't want to get caught with my pants down. And I felt like a lot of things, last night's conversation was, it just seemed like they were there to take their licks. They didn't come there to be like, we're gonna work the angles.
And
We're
didn't we
gonna-"
have a meeting like a year ago that was the exact same thing?
It was not even a year ago, it was just like in the fall.
Yeah.
And it was the
Exactly.
same
It was
kind of
exactly
meeting.
the
It was
same.
so disappointing.
But to build up what Steve said with the educators kind of leaving the room, the Vermont Diggers had an article about people leaving the commission because they felt like they haven't been heard as like experts in the area.
The vice chair and the chair
Yeah.
left the commission, Nicole Mace
I
and
mean, they're-
Rebecca
Megan Roy.
Holcomb. No, Megan Roy, sorry.
I mean,
The
their
difference is-
charge has been cut way back, so they.
Yeah.
Yeah, our charge, we went from a very large charge, we had 4 things to, that we're being charged with. So just so some understanding, there's 13 members, and a lot of us as educators have talked about whether we see it worth our time, and what I've shared with people is, you know, I'm the appointee of an organization, so I have to have a conversation with my organization first, but I honestly don't see it as a good use of my time. I haven't resigned yet, but I don't see it as a good use of my time, nor do I see it as a good use of this group's time, who has invested a lot of time and energy. Megan was on, she chaired the it was a special education commission that reformed our special education programming, Act 173, and she was the first to resign, followed by the representative from the School Board Association, and
Which was Nicole Mace.
Nicole Mace,
She was a
correct.
great,
So is it our decision then to have you resign or not? Like this group's decision?
I'm the representative of the Vermont School Board Association.
Okay. Shucks.
she's
One other thing taken from us.
I don't know, a lot of times these things kind of work by last man standing. So sometimes sitting in a room where nothing happens until all of a sudden there's a decision has some value.
Just some decision.
I mean,
Out there.
you know, Mike was on the finance subcommittee of this commission, and I was really looking forward to a report on, are we going to finance this? You will have experts writing this report. That subcommittee's gone, and instead we have legislators who indeed look like deer in the headlights at this point.
They're ready for their session to end.
Ann Watson cried at this meeting.
Yeah.
She cried because of talking about school closure. She was sad.
Yeah. Several of the things I've seen really talk about it is the difference when we put together this particular committee for deciding our districting of this whole state
Yeah.
as a political issue. It's been politicized
Right.
versus really looking at policy, looking at what we have as a what would make sense policy-wise for this state? Should we be looking at different things? And that should be a policy decision rather than the political decision that it currently is. I think.
And it's all about politics, because the hitting us with that like flamethrower governor's proposal, the lady from Florida, who they also sidebarred because she was wildly unpopular, so they just tucked her up and replaced her with someone else, that Jason Maguchi, who's his chief of staff, started to be the spokesperson because people did not like her. What was her name? I can't even think.
Zoe Saunders.
She was, she just kept telling it like you do it in Florida. You tell it. You take it.
Miami-Dade only has 3,000.
I know, what's the big deal? 380,000 kids. I mean, and that was, it felt very political. It felt like the governor wants his administration to get hold of something and deliver. But his legacy is going to be a shambles. I don't understand. I cannot. He was a centrist sort of Republican, and now he is most definitely not that.
He is, if you look at where the rest of the.
I don't know. Is he though? He appointed someone from Florida. He went against the Senate in that appointment.
By the new administration.
He has indeed. He has indeed. I mean, though they voted like 23-6 to not take Zoe Saunders as the Secretary of Ed, and he appointed her against the will of his whatever, Senate.
I'd just like to point something out as a Republican. This is, and I love this board, but I also want to be clear that I want to separate people's political decision making, right, from the politics that they might find themselves in, which is to say that Governor Scott might be, he might be a centrist Republican, he might be a very right-wing Republican, he might be a Trump Republican. It really doesn't matter what he is. If he's making bad decisions, let's focus on those bad decisions. If he's making good decisions, let's focus on that rather than the political party, because I feel like this is something that spans political parties, and we've got a lot of people making some, I think, pretty bad decisions no matter what their political party. And when it comes to this, there's a lot of deer in the headlights. And I think that probably comes from a lot of people just not understanding where their particular issues are, or where their stances are coming from, the outcomes of that. Because obviously some people are having to now claim, well, I was for it before I was against it, and those kinds of things, because I'm noticing their voting patterns are, well, I voted for it and then I voted against it, and I'm looking at that and going, well, what's changed for you? And they can't really articulate it. So I caution us moving ahead, but I also I'm disheartened. I'm really disheartened, and I feel Dr. Mike's disheartenment too about how he just feels like what good will come of shouting up the wind, really, when the wind is pushing this hard.
Yep.
So a piece of this is also to create some new revenue for second homeowners, right? Baked into this?
They broke out into the different kinds of homes. So you have the homestead, non-homestead, but they broke that non-homestead into basically vacation rentals and then other commercial businesses.
And I don't expect anybody to know this, but how much revenue are we anticipating from that? And is that going to happen ASAP? No, right? So we just were like, fuck it, let's throw this to the winds, this whole governance structure, and we're going to save some money, but not really with the plan on how to save the money?
That is
I just want to make sure I like.
That's what we got. That's what
I'm
we got.
hearing.
That's what we got
Some
from
of us think.
Okay.
And the people on that panel, even Ann Cummings, who was very negative, I just felt like they looked demoralized, they looked broken. I mean, it was not pretty. I mean, Dara and Candace a little less because they're the freshmen, they're those young, and in terms of how they voted, Dara voted against and Candace voted for, and
Did Candace give any reason as a way to?
Yes, she gave a
She
bunch
sent,
of,
and she sent the letter she sent, and she listed out the
Yeah.
reasons, but a couple of them were just incorrect.
yeah,
So-
it was
so-
incorrect. None of it was any good. It all felt sold to them to be sold to us.
Yeah, I do have her letter, so we can.
Or it had been sold to her. I think it
Yes,
had
and
been sold
she's
to
younger,
her, you know?
And I think she knew Dara was gonna vote no, so her voting yes, there created a little
It's
balance for
complicated.
us.
Like she
It's
said, our
complicated.
committee is transportation and
I
ours
know.
is energy.
It is, yes, so they're just there getting their votes, getting sold.
Yeah.
All right, our dinner is served, so we will,
Oh,
this is why this is so much different than a normal meeting now. We're gonna just relax and eat.
So there's no agenda item, so I'm gonna pause the Zoom video.
Oh, we can watch us eat.
So now you guys here, when you're ready, but just eat while we do it. Yeah, there's a rule of foot that Bridget needs is trying to try to get on the.
Are you starting? Did you see what is?
Sure, Mike, give us
I haven't started eating yet though.
All right, well, you can eat and chat at the same time. All right. Okay, so, next part of our retreat is is a discussion piece, and this is basically, it kind of is a Harkness style, which is a Harwood tradition, which is basic, the Harkness in Harwood's world is bringing groups together to talk in a non-combative and friendly setting where all people are heard and people get to really take time to participate and listen. That's kind of what Harkness is. And Mike helped us write a workshop, not a workshop, this little mini workshop that we're going to do, which is basically, we kind of are now thrown into this mix, especially new board members, right? You've just come onto this board and now we really don't know what is going to happen to our board as a whole and individually and all that in terms of this. So I'm just going to read this because I think it's well written. We'll just get out with these when we break into the week. So I'm just going to read this because I think it's right. So thank you for leaning into this next part of our retreat. We're calling it Leading Through Uncertainty, a Board Dialogue, because that is exactly where we are. We are leading, but what we're leading and how we're doing it is uncertain because the rules have changed. We don't know what our future holds exactly. The governor and the state legislature have created real instability around school governance across the state. It's unclear how or whether our local boards, including ours, will continue to operate in the same way or if they will operate at all. I mean, we don't know. If it's a bigger district, maybe one person from this board is on it. Hard to say what that will end up looking like. It's not an easy time to be in a leadership role, certainly not to start in one. People are tired, people are frustrated. They're frustrated for not understanding how the system works. They're fatigued because we've all heard it to death and you kind of start to, last night was very clear that they've heard that the legislature and the Senate have heard so many statistics and so many numbers that they can't even keep them straight. And we've had so much of that thrown at us that we're also in that position. Even though that's all going on though, we are in this role. And it is important that even if it's the end of something or it's the beginning of something, that we're doing it with intention, that we're doing it as a team, that we are considering a lot of things all at the same time. Our people, our constituents, our communities, parents, teachers, we are still their touch to what is going to happen. So leading with intention and making sure we're considering all of those important details as we do this is kind of what this conversation is about. So the idea is it'll give us space to talk about what this moment means to us as board members and as people connected to our schools. We're going to break up into groups of 3 or 4 and We're gonna talk for about 20 minutes. We've got some prompts, and they're just questions about the situations we find ourselves in. Here's some of them. What has this period of uncertainty felt like for you as a board member? What do you find hardest to navigate right now in all this new information? What still gives you a sense of purpose and pride in the work we're doing? How do we lead locally with the future of local leadership when it's so unclear? And what values or priorities do we want to not lose sight of as this structure changes? Like, what is important to us? And we feel like this is important because the last few months have felt a lot like we're flailing around just waiting to hear what the heck is what's the next step. So rather than try to do professional development here where we sat here and talked about rules and the way we operate as a board, which, we could do that, but we're doing it while this big thing is looming over us, so it feels sort of empty. So rather than do that, we're going to break up into groups. You can use these prompts. You don't have to answer these questions. This is basically to start your conversation. We're going to chat in smaller groups for 20 minutes. When we come back together, we're just going to try to get everybody's sort of real takeaway feeling about what is important to you, what is important to us as a board, where, as we step into next year, what should we not be putting down or forgetting. So that's what we're going to do. All right, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about that, and then at the end we're going to do our ideas, and some people, Dan gave us some ideas and then he didn't come to the meeting because he has a sports commitment that got changed.
But I have his notes, I can read what he said.
Yeah.
No, I was just referencing Dan had 3.
Dan had 3 and we only told Rebecca she could only have 2, but you did have 26. I know. I had to bring you back into the fold. But there's only some on here because some people submitted those. There's plenty of room. We want to hear from everyone. If you have something that you want to say, we want to hear it. So,
Not too much.
but not too much, exactly.
Was that for me? That was for me, wasn't it?
Again, not too much. So,
And we would have cut him back to 2 if he didn't.
Oh, if you
But
had.
he didn't even come for us to do that.
luckily. All right, so we're gonna break up into groups. We'll count off by 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll separate, and then into those groups, all the 1s, all the 2s, all the 3s, and then we'll come back together and talk again. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, go for it. You can sit anywhere in the room. We've got the prompts and notebooks. Yep, here, we'll give each group one of these.
Ones, where we at?
3.
2, where are we at?
2s.
Couch?
Sure.
Over there?
I want a different group. 2s right over here.
We want a couch.
We want the couch. 4.
Okay, all right, 4.
You need your
Also, the group
4s.
couch.
The notebook is just if you want to make notes.
JB. Yeah, man.
4. Here's 4.
Right here.
Don't confuse us. We're confused enough.
Very small.
You know what I liked about that? I didn't realize you sent me scribbling until the very end.
Everybody has to
Son
read
of a gun. You left me talking about myself. All right. Here we go. What has this period of uncertainty felt like for you as a board? Start with you.
Or the right side.
Planning.
have to put that away. This is the one place for cell phone usage. It's okay.
Right, there's no rules here in the matter of bar.
Okay.
Talk on your cell phone all
Is there a
night.
signal here? I mean, for Christ's sake, we're drinking.
I was just texting my dad.
Okay, so how was that? We had a good conversation?
Yeah. Except now I'm frustrated.
I know, I bet, me too. And I'm even a little more confused. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for adding a new level of confusion. Yes. So, does anyone want to give us a gist of what their group or they took from that little session? Like, what was your takeaway? I'm interested. Ben?
So, our... I just want to go on the record saying that you all want me to talk.
Yes,
so
we do.
Who was your group?
My group consists of myself, Rob, and Lisa.
Okay.
So, we felt like the hardest thing really to navigate was around uncertainty. That we were frustrated by a lot of what state legislatures had to say. We were glad that they were saying anything at all, really, because certainly during that first year of the discombobulation, they were saying nothing at all, and a lot of people were staring at us, the school board, and saying, give us answers, and we had no answers to give them, other than look at the state, it's them, and the state was silent. So we are very appreciative of our state legislatures and the amount of communication they're giving to the newspapers and holding these forums, even though we might disagree with what they're saying, even though we might disagree with the reasons and rationales behind their voting patterns or agree with them. We are understanding that the top-down heaviness of what they are trying to put forth might restore somebody's vision or order of how they think things should be. The problem is that they're sort of dragging voters along with them and dragging local municipalities along with them. And so along with that, school districts are sort of caught in between and are seeing that we're losing the best parts of Vermont and the reason why we all live here or moved here. And so we're left sort of scratching our heads saying, why are you eroding away the very thing that brought all these people here in the first place? The good schools, the good communities, the things that we all love. Why would you replace that with something that looks a lot like, oh, well, we've wiped away the local governments to bring you all regional governors who'll take care of it all. It looks a little stereotypically like the beginning of a Star Wars film than anything else. So we are left with this notion of, look, we understand that if this is a blanket of, look, we want change, we gave you change, and then really we're going to start fixing the cost drivers in this, the healthcare, the other things that are driving up the cost of education, and we're going to be fixing that underneath this blanket and then amending it as we go. We understand that, but if this is just a blanket to say we did something and then peace out, we're walking away, you guys deal with the ramifications of it. I think everybody in every party is going to be looking at a contested re-election bid. I think they're going to lose their seat in just about every party. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because nobody could have predicted that we had the kind of political winds of change that we had here in Vermont just recently. And I think those political winds are going to continue based upon people's voting records on 454. And as we keep going on, if we find that legislators are ruining the very best parts of what it means to be Vermont, they're going to find that they're going to lose their seats regardless of political party. And so that's something that they should be thinking about in the back of their mind and taking very, very seriously. Because this is not something that the voters who we've talked to, or the voters that, the parents of the children that we've talked to, this isn't something that they're going to forget. This is something that is very deep within them, and this is something that is not leaving them anytime soon. So that's what we talked about.
I don't remember any of that.
Most of that came from Rob.
Thank you. I actually, that's a lot of how I'm feeling, so thank you. That's good. And Emily, what'd you take away from your group?
I was not nominated as spokesperson, but that's okay. So I think some of the things that we took away is just sort of trying to remember that we need to focus on the things that we have control over. So 454 seems very overwhelming and deflating, and I mentioned how, when I saw how certain portions, the initial steps had passed to be moving forward, just feeling very deflated, especially as a new board member. But then realizing we have an entire school year ahead of us that's not going to be affected by this, and I think that we need to work very hard as a board to do our very best to communicate to our community so that they understand what's actually happening in the schools. We talked about what we could do to maybe combat the misinformation that goes around, what we can do to try and get the word out to community members more that are not in the school district with students. Dr. Mike does an amazing job of sending out communications, but those are admittedly a lot of the times focused very specifically on the families that are in the district, and not as much communication to the people that don't have students or grandchildren or family that are a part of the district. So we should try to figure out what we can do to get that communication happening, because as more information starts to come out with how things will maybe change and what could happen by 2029, there's going to be a lot of people that don't have all the facts. And that's going to be a very hard thing for us to combat. We talked about things like, as boring as those YouTube videos are on the education sessions, those are very valuable pieces of information that a lot of people probably don't know exist, because I didn't know until recently. To sort of figure out what are all the tools that we could better utilize to make sure that people are really seeing what it is as a board that we are doing, which is more than just saying field trip is approved.
Right.
And I think that's sort of one of the things that I'm thinking about it being some of the big the obstacles of how can we make sure that we are communicating. And then the last sort of thing we talked about was what can we possibly do to get more community members that might want to actually come to a board meeting, because then they might actually see and understand some of the things that are happening, and not just because there's a controversy happening, like maybe we're going to close Moortown School, and then there's lots of people. And I say that as somebody who also never went to a board meeting and occasionally looked at things online, but realizing now just how important it is that we're sitting in a room, and if we were at the school right now, this is a regular board meeting, there wouldn't be anybody there. There wouldn't be anybody from the community. But gosh forbid if we went and made some call that then everyone's all upset. If we can just find a way to
Incentivize,
try to get people feeling like you do have a voice just as much as we have a voice here on the board. It just has to be done in a little bit of a different manner. So anyway. How'd I do on our
I
notes?
think you did really well. I think one of the things that I thought towards the end we talked about was the concept of the board speaking with one voice, that it's important for us at our meetings to to spend some time discussing exactly what we are getting out, the messages that's going out and how it's going out, that it's a unified voice from the board. We may have our own individual different voices, opinions that we can put out in our own as our own, but it's also important for us as a board to be putting out a unified voice too, to be coming together on how we're feeling about. That was one thing that I thought, and the other thing was how to get public. And the other thing that I thought, Emily, that I think you really stressed and was really good, was making sure that the students and parents of students feel supported by the board. Again, we were talking about what we in our leadership role could do, and important that we be as positive as we can with the students and with the parents, and letting them feel, being sure they're supported.
Yeah, the last thing on that is one of the things that I mentioned is that we have the kids that are in high school now are part of the COVID generation. There's a lot of kids that are part of the COVID generation. But one of the things that I also a little bit concerned about is that if you've got the students like Emma that are paying attention and understand a little bit about what's happening, how are we supporting them socially and emotionally, because they wear the brunt of stress without realizing it, and are we still doing things to make sure that they're feeling like they're being supported with this uncertainty? Because the kids that are going into freshman year this year, it could be very different when they graduate in 2029 if these things really do go into effect. So what are we doing to try to make sure, what can we do to make sure that these students are feeling supported during another level of uncertainty?
And the importance of our good communication, intercommunication, not only between ourselves, but also with our administrators, so that we're hearing from them, but also expressing to them what our opinions are and what things are, so they're in a position to be sure they're supporting what we as a board are doing, and that we get good information from them. But that's an important interaction going on for us as a board.
I'm confused by that. When you say your interactions with our administrators, you're just talking about Dr. Mike.
And Lisa, and then any of the other administrators that they...
Principals?
No, that they bring mostly to board meetings. So, there's always at least one
Shannon,
board meeting. Shannon
different-
comes sometimes.
John Berliner.
Other board
I just
meetings,
understood
John
that.
Berliner comes when we're talking special ed. So other members of the administrative team, as Mike and Lisa feel it's important for us to be having an interaction with them, so that we're presenting what's going on. The MTSS stuff that Mandy did, I thought last week, 2 weeks ago, was really helpful for me in understanding MTSS better and what it was and how it worked. And just to have her there and have that communication was helpful to me as a board member when people are talking about, well, you need to be cutting administrator, what does an administrator really do? It was just helpful as a board member if I know what Mandy really does and that kind of thing.
Well, interestingly, building on what Emily said, our group mainly listened to Emma because we were talking about student awareness, first of all. I mean, not very many students are aware of what's going on. And talking about supporting them as they go through this, that's kind of part and parcel, but we were talking about maybe our student reps doing some communication with the student body, maybe in video, maybe, using their different ways that they communicate, like perhaps at a assembly where they could show a video kind of outlining maybe, or explaining kind of what's happening to dip the toe. Rebecca brought up that it does raise anxiety, so maybe it's gradual, it's a gradual process as we learn about it. We should be sharing it out so that, again, it sounds like communication is a real theme. And we all know, and your new board members, you will find out, you all probably already know, nobody comes to our meetings unless the shit's hitting the fan, something's wrong, and people are there to protest or there to really make their feelings known. And most people, and I was this before I was on the board too, I just trust and deal with my own life, and when things come up that were about my world or felt like I should be present to learn, to go to that meeting, I would go to meetings at Harwood, but not often. And the lack of participation in our meetings beyond our board, I think that's pretty typical, but it would be a great thing to change, because we do run up against, we take the grief because we're the low-hanging governmental fruit, right? We're the people, you can go to the meeting, you can talk to your elected official, you can be mad. There's not very many, I mean, Dr. Mike mentioned, we have legislatures who will actually sit down with us, so it's a little different here, but we are right in between. We are the level of government where people should be able to talk to us and should want to. I don't think they necessarily, it's not on people's radar, but it should be.
And there are lots of avenues to attend meetings, including Zooming. But there are a lot of people for whom that doesn't happen. So one other idea is to go to where people are. So in other words, go to an evergreen luncheon and talk to the senior citizens.
Great idea.
Go to, and it takes time, it would take, a lot of effort, but it might be worth it. Go to a workplace and, like Ben and Jerry's, and, get people between shifts or something. So there are lots of people that just can't. I mean, they're working so hard, and then they come home and they want dinner and they want family time, and they're not gonna go out to a board meeting, they're not gonna turn on, I'm sorry, but they're gonna turn on reality TV instead of. So it's really, but, it might be helpful, like if we knew that a certain department was gonna be presenting, really bill it like something exciting. Come hear about such a.
Free cake.
Yeah, free cake.
Chocolate, free
June
donuts.
11th, we had, do we have any public at the June 11th meeting? But 30, I just pulled up YouTube, 33 people viewed it, so maybe that's something
They're
for,
watching it afterward. Yeah.
keep in mind that people do watch the meetings. Is there a better way, are there ways we can do better at engaging and sharing, knowing that people are gonna view those videos?
So before I came here, I was at another event, and I was talking to somebody that I used to wear an orange shirt with, the Save Our Schools orange shirts before this. So I really haven't been paying attention as much. I know 454 is a shit show, but I trust Dr. Mike. So I don't need to. And so I think of people not lining up, spending 3 hours of their day on top of working whatever thing for the kids to listen to us talk is really a measure of trust. And I think a way to also make sure we're talking to people, like not having people at the meeting is good. It means they're not unhappy. But then also just making sure our stuff is really easy to find and really transparent, and our minutes are really clear. That's how you get people. So they can just look at it in 30 seconds, a couple bullet points. Okay, I'm good. Nobody wants to sit at this meeting besides me and you.
They say that's why we elected you. I hear that.
Right, yeah.
That's
So
what
glad-
you're dealing with that.
Yeah, thank you for doing this job.
And I think, to give some credit, I think Steve Rosenberg, I've only been on the board for 3 years, but in the first 2 years, we did not very much communicating. It just didn't really, we weren't doing it quite in the way we're doing it now. Now, admittedly, we didn't have as much to communicate. But I think that we need to build on what we're doing with our outreach, and maybe there's a way to, flood the airwaves even more and create and perpetuate the trust. I feel like this is a solid board full of very trustworthy people that's clear. You get a sense from people, and I think that I wish people listened or read more about it so that they don't feel like the world's on fire when the issue comes up that does light them up. They're like, oh my God, what? But if they'd been listening all along, it wouldn't feel like that. Because I know that when I hear things that are misinformation or just a distortion of what's been put out, I'm ready to quash and push that down at the Hurons and talk to somebody and be like, well, it's not exactly that, it's this, or I know that one-on-one is important and getting out there is important, but I wonder if we should be releasing a more often newsletter. We should be putting more data together that's going out so there's more to see.
The couple planning commissions put their minutes on Front Porch Forum, or they put their agendas on Front Porch Forum. I mean, just putting our minutes on Front Porch Forum, making.
Minutes and maybe the link to the video.
So you mentioned something that
That's
I've been
easy.
thinking about is I would like to get something written up, at least once a month that we can all put in our towns from Front Porch Forum.
Like a uniform
A
piece.
uniform, like we want to talk with one voice. Ideally, we would have something at least once a month that we can send out.
Then, and are you
That's
suggesting,
from-
and is that like just like a topical, like what we're dealing with right this second? Or is that like a more of a, this is where we're at on this and this and this? Like, we are already publishing things, but they're different. It depends on what's going on. Are you meaning more newsletter, or are you thinking more just based on what's happening in that moment?
I think what's happening in that one is
Yeah.
what I was
Yeah.
envisioning.
I think it's a good
Right,
idea.
so
I do
understand
too.
distinction.
I actually think,
I think it's based on the last.
one of our biggest problems is that people don't pay attention to us until shit's on fire.
I feel like, I feel like a lot of people lack
And I mean, if
incentive,
we still put something there.
To watch,
I feel like a lot of people lack incentive to watch or to pay attention because a lot of the time they don't think it involves them, because since they don't have a say, then why would they want to? But what you're saying is people get scared when they don't watch, so it's kind of counterintuitive. So I feel like if we put out on something that we, like you're saying, that we know people will pay attention to, like maybe the family newsletter or in the roundabout or something like that, it might be more helpful because people will read that, people pay attention, and if we're just putting it out online, not many people are gonna go searching for it.
but if we use Front Porch Forum, most grown-ups read that.
That is true.
I mean, I don't read that all the time, but I do, I'll skim, they give you all the.
Oh, I love it. You lose a dog and somebody finds the dog.
Yeah,
All
who did we miss? What about, go ahead first.
All
Julie.
this information we're talking about sharing is stuff that generally is going to be on the school board website, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so then all we need to do is a designated person for each town posting on the town's
yeah,
Facebook,
and
or
we do
Front Porch Forum.
kind of do that already, yeah.
But if it's already in a place, then we don't need to recreate the wheel. We just need to share that better.
But I think we might be talking about some additional pieces, like we don't put.
Right,
on
which
the-
could
Yeah,
just go
and then it
on
could
the
go on
school
the
board
website. I
website.
got you.
Like, let's not talk about adding more work and creating yet another space.
So who was the last person to post something about the school board on Front Porch Forum?
Probably me.
Yeah,
Probably me.
Steve.
And where did you post it? For your town?
For the valley.
Valley.
Oh, actually, for
For Moortown.
Moortown.
Yeah.
So could that have been applicable to everybody? So like everybody could have put out that same blurb?
It's
It's a little bit complicated because when I post on Front Porch Forum, I do it as an individual. So it doesn't have the tone of an announcement from the school board. But what I'm thinking is, the Valley Reporter and Waterbury Roundabout, they really like to find out about things before it appears on Front Porch Forum. So I wonder if they would be interested in a bi-weekly or monthly piece from the board, and then whatever, once that comes out, we can duplicate it on Front Porch Forum.
And on our website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, like meet it head on and get out in front of it as we enter into the next.
I think you probably have this-
Utilizing existing spaces that are already there for sharing information, just doing a better job of
More.
putting that information out there so that people.
And maybe it's every Monday, or every other Monday, or whatever it is, it's always gonna be there, and we
After
can
board
start
meetings.
after a board meeting.
And we get board meetings on Wednesdays, the following Monday or something.
Right.
So if you're lining it up, you want to line it up with the Valley Reporter and the Roundabout? Well, the
Yeah.
Valley Reporter,
You have to get it in.
so you have to get it in by Wednesday at noon, and then doesn't come out to the following Thursday.
So-
Well,
Thursday. sorry.
But she does a newsletter every week. There's another in-between thing
But
that Lisa sends
I
out.
don't read it.
I think what you could do is, so there's two things. So we have a district account, and we can post so many posts per month, Front Porch Forum. But it's two. But I also think there's value in each of you publishing to your own account, having your name attached. At the same time, I think probably Ashley and Cindy could take the thoughts from the day, and we could come up with, make this an agenda item at the first meeting in August. And I think there's a template, basically, here's what we're gonna include and share out, so that there's at least a structure that everyone agrees to. I think
Yeah, because the deal is we were doing something under the name of the board, coming out from actually me as the chair and vice chair, or as the board. Then
That's the
we
most
need to have
powerful.
passed that. You guys all need to
We have
have
to
agreed
vote.
that this is really what the board is saying. So if we had an agenda item on the first meeting of the month, that we brought whatever the piece goes we want to do, if we were going to do an every 2 weeks piece or something, whatever. But at some point, we have to link it up so as a board, we vote on it as, yes, that's our board piece for the week or for the month.
But can't we
I think
have
that gets
public outreach?
incredibly complicated because we're trying to report out on what the board
Quickly.
has done very quickly, and having to do it as a board action that's a board item, an agenda item, that makes it a lot more complicated.
Yes.
We're gonna be behind the eight.
I'm wondering if if our committee has can we allow the public outreach committee to publish things without a board vote from the board if we agree on that in
Well,
advance?
I think if you come up with a
Format.
Here's what we're going to report on, the highlights of what we covered at the meeting, any upcoming, whatever it is, and share out the video, and that's going to be compiled into a brief article.
With the highlights, like actual verbiage of the
Right.
hot topic this week was this.
I mean,
This is what we're worrying about, or
The purpose of the vote is to make sure if you're making a statement,
you're all
we're
willing to
talking
sign on to
for it,
it.
that everyone agrees that that's something important. It's just respecting the voice of every individual as a group that you want to make sure you do. But I think, like I said, if you have some kind of form, just to Rob's point, that these are the things we agree to, so it doesn't have to be
Right, because can't we just
complicated.
vote to do that? Can't we have a vote to allow that structured document to be, so we could vote on it at the beginning of this season. that we're gonna do that.
And you can't just cut and paste the minutes and just send the minutes with
The
the
minutes are
links?
pretty,
We could change the way the minutes are doing because we have a person to do it for us, so that there could be more beef to the minutes, because the whole thing is about transparency. So that at any point, you can look on the website and find the minutes and have a lot more beef, hyperlinks away to things, so everything's
A lot
always
of our
that.
minutes
Just
are
the
pretty-
minutes, you said remember, the minutes are a legal document.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah, we
think that's a
tried
slippery
it.
slope.
Yeah, you're-
We
yeah,
try that
that's-
word recap, and the danger is if you don't report the minutes as they are legally recorded, it can later backfire.
Right, so I'm talking about the same exact document.
but if there's,
But it's on the website.
well,
That's
that's on the
hard to
website.
find on the website, and we're not very in-depth on the website.
But then you're gonna get into back and forth about what should be in the minutes. That could go on for days and days. I mean, you want the minutes to record the motions, the substance of the meeting, a high-level review. If you start getting into the weeds of the minutes, then we're gonna spend a whole meeting, if not a couple, just approving the minutes and amending them. That's, the minutes
The
are not, the
reason-
minutes are not real.
But I think that I think the minutes are a piece of this, but I don't think it's the most important thing, because as you pointed out, our minutes are full of, we approved this and we did that, and but it's more of the meat of the discussion.
Can't we just simplify this? If part of our goal that we've all been talking about here is just to get information out there, we already have to put our agenda out there. Like, why can't we just make it simple of being like, we're all gonna post to our front porch forums, here's the agenda for, like, maybe we just start, like, we were just overthinking it. And just working on sharing that information out there so people know what is even gonna be
Discussed.
discussed.
I mean, even that is something.
Even that is more than what's been happening.
That's true. That is true.
I was gonna say, I think like when I'm thinking about this for our last meeting, if I'm understanding this correctly, what Rob's idea would be posting it from Porch Forum, like School board met on June 11th. We had a riveting discussion about ongoing fundraising for the school auditorium. Did you know they had an asbestos-filled curtain? Neither did we. Learn more at the minutes. Here's the link to the minutes, here's a link to the video. Like, just like a very one-liner.
I like that
We
too,
also
yeah.
voted to save money on our new oil contracts. Check out how much.
Highlights.
Yeah.
Literally almost like
Literally,
highlights.
one or two
without-
sentences.
So if we're sharing that, we're sharing the agenda, like ahead, then then we can.
Way more than we're doing.